Since I was a little boy, I always wanted to be a superhero. I mean, who didn't, right? And even though I grew older and realized that spider bites don't exactly give people superpowers, I didn't give up on my dream. And even if I couldn't get the super, I can still become a hero. There are many heroes in society, from doctors and nurses to engineers and scientists. The opportunities were endless. But as I was supposed to decide on a career, well, we needed heroes in the world.
China has identified the
response to climate change. Security.
These years highlighted one hero above all others. One that displays an extraordinary ability and shows up every day against all odds to selflessly care for countless lives, all to support not themselves, but an entire nation. Maybe I can become a superhero after all.
We really probably got started in 2017, and since then to now, we've freely distributed several thousand breadfruit trees. Lucky for us, through various types of networking, we've been able to spread breadfruit trees across this country. Beyond communities and efforts all around the country, we have also partnered with institutions. So we have a breadfruit forest established at the prison. We also gave 105 to the university for a fee. So in the longer term from this specific exercise, we hope to introduce free food mass, especially to the most vulnerable among us, and we want to make that sustainable and most nutritious. And that could only start, of course, by looking at where we eat, how we use, and even how we waste our food, and having a sort of rethink of development policy and planning in agriculture.
A breath of love interchangeably, decreasingly.
But in every drought, no doubt, there's always a loading lush.
An effort, a teaching, a broader lesson, an influence. A breath of love interchangeably, increasingly, earthly concerns, urging considerations, environment, humans, environment, from one breath to another, love.
There is a hero that dwells in each of us.
Change is to trust that better stands with us.
Well, I think we owe it to the children of the world to listen to their cries for a better planet and for they to live in a safer world. Because a lot of young students from all over the world have lost confidence in many world leaders because they kept putting profit before planet and profit before people, and they left a trail of mess for the young people to clean up.
Your leaves fall beneath, creating soil fertility. Your ecosystem is unique for peace and harmony.
You said 300.
Nah, $1.
Son, how's the fundraiser going?
Yeah, it's good. It's a little difficult, but I'll get through it.
You're not mixing matters at all, boy.
Your sister, she said she's very proud of you, all the work that you're doing. She said you're her hero.
Well, I guess in our own way, we all are.
Vision AI activated.
Daddy loves you.
Search now. Still searching. Arriving soon to destination. Search complete.
What happened next?
Could you believe the humans stopped using materials that were dangerous for the earth? They also started walking more and sharing their rolling metal cabins, and even found new ways to use the things that they didn't want. Then suddenly, the rain came. The earth had cooled down and its balance was restored. Happily, the fairies were now able to collect water to use and quickly attended to their crops and washed their clothes. Life was returning. And so when they had finished their chores and bathed in the rain, there was happiness in their souls because the humans were able to bring the water again.
Ma, you think it will come again?
Maybe one day.
Hi, it's Shelby from a group of artists, and today we'll be talking about upcycling and recycling in the art department. Upcycling is the process of transforming byproducts, waste materials, useless or unwanted products into new materials or products perceived to be of greater quality, such as artistic value or environmental value, while recycling is the process of collecting and processing materials that would otherwise be thrown away as trash or turn them into new products. So how do we utilize these processes in film? Using cardboard and empty cartons, etc. to upcycle and create props. To support upcycling and recycling is the concept of reusing. Use over the same equipment such as makeshift reflectors, light stands and gels to reduce the need for more material. So it's simple. Get creative, reuse the used, and use what you have.
Hi, I'm Simon from a group of artists, and today we will address nature in film. When we talk about respecting nature in filmmaking, we open up a topic about working with the space instead of working against it. Example, you need to keep it clean. Take all your garbage back with you. Do not cut the trees or break the branches off. Do not destroy the crops or nearby vegetations. In our film Lady Nature, all the scenes were filmed without changing any of the natural environment. Using the outdoors adds a certain raw, beautiful feel that can be aesthetically used easily. So we found an interesting space, Lopino River and Forest Park dumping sites, respecting the areas that may be banned from the public and requesting permission from the right authorities to use the space. In filmmaking, it can be very tedious, but you want to be able to practice good habits to keep the environment intact.
Hi, it's Shelby from Magoa. We'll be talking about energy consumption. We use energy in all sorts of ways, on-set and off-set, from charging our cameras to plugging in our lights. The simplest way to reduce energy consumption is therefore more simple than you think. Utilize the natural environment to save energy intake by your equipment. How can nature replace our equipment? Not completely replace it, but assist greatly. Using the sunlight with diffusers and reflectors to support to give some well-lit shots and beautiful varying time of day tones. In this, you can also play with the temperatures and natural lighting provides. For example, a shoot at noon for bright, cheerful scene and one at sunset for a more reminiscent, grateful, even romantic scene. Different times, different feels and aesthetics. Now coming inside, you can switch off your fluorescent bulbs and lamps and replace it with LEDs and try minimal fixture lighting setups. Finally, don't be afraid to do further research.
Hi, it's Simon from a group of artists, and today we will talk about reducing your carbon footprint. In filmmaking, no matter the size, you leave a certain amount of emissions. In an eco-friendly production, you use the best practices to encourage sustainability. Example, carpooling if you are going to be looking for a location with someone other than yourself. You can meet and go in one vehicle. You can also make use of the public transportation or even use a nearby park or an area that fits your film well and therefore does not require too much movement. In one of our films, Planet Normal, we used one house and made it look like multiple spaces using different areas in the home to reflect a different feel. All in all, your main purpose is to be efficient and effective while being conscious of how you affect everything as a whole.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Green Screen Film Festival. My name is Soyini Gray. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we are here for a panel called the Social Responsibility for Impact. Green Screen 2020 will shine a light on everyday heroes and let their stories inspire all of us to do better for ourselves and for each other. Our festival theme this year will highlight stories of resilience, ingenuity, creativity, vision, and care for each other and this world we call home. This evening's discussion on social responsibility for impact will highlight projects, people, and initiatives across the Caribbean and how real impact can be and has been achieved. And after this very special viewing, we're going to invite our panelists to share their stories with our live audience about the best practices, tools, and guidance on achieving environmental sustainability commitments. And specifically, how do you design projects and programs that have real-world impact and improve the lives of people? So this evening's program, we're going to start with a short film. It's called The GrassMen II. It's directed by Aiko and Vonnie Roudette. It features an emergent project that focuses on the use of vetiver in conservation and food security as a focus for prisoner rehabilitation. Let's take a look at The GrassMen II.
Nature is life. Life is nature. I mean, they both go together. My name is Rod Lewis and I am a grassman. A project was started at Her Majesty's Prison in Kingston by Miss Vonnie Roudette. Men who have been imprisoned, they get to learn and acquire a skill by which they can plait the grass and make craft out of it, and they can help themselves financially, they can help their families.
Today is the beginning of a new project for us, which is linked with the grass programme that you're all involved in. And it's involving the planting of the grass. We want to start the project on about 1 acre that is over there. You just walk past it, which is where we want to plant the vetiver grass. Whoever feels motivated to work with this project will be able to teach other people in the community how to work with the vetiver grass for land conservation.
I could remember when we first got there to the land in Panelists, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of work to do here. The land looked like nothing had been planted there for quite some time. You know, it looked like if a lot of bush and trees had just grown up. We had to chop down some trees and some plants and stuff so that we can start planting the vetiver grass. Apart from the fact that we had quite a lot of work to do, you know, to get the land started, you know, it felt great, you know, and to see that I was going to be a part of a very important project, you know, it felt great. When you're a grassman, there are certain things that you have in you after you've acquired, you know, certain skills in the grass program. We had really wanted to get the nursery started. So even though it was raining, we had decided, yo, we have to get this done. All in all, I think it took us about 3 days to get the land cleared before we could actually start planting the vetiver grass. There were 3 processes by which we had planted the grass. We had planted some in some grow bags. We had planted out some in a kind of grid frame like, and then we had planted some, the majority actually, in contours. The ones for the grow bags, a coal pit was recently born in the area there, so we had actually took that soil, you know, it was very rich in minerals, and we had put that into the grow bags and planted out some of the shoots in that.
Check this, guys. Once it's got 3,
yes, you know them and go in the bag. Then we go in the soil by itself because it will spread. Yeah.
Just the small ones we're putting in the bag.
Yeah, we will have to refill. So, you know, so we have to use. So this is one.
So something like that. Even this, watch this. You see some of this old stuff can come off. Okay, you 3 guys here. We're going to plant out some rows. Some of the other shoots there that are slightly bigger than what they're put here.
To go in the soil.
And we're going to put them in the soil.
We planted some of the shoots on a grid frame.
That we can just cut through to cover the weeds.
The plants that we had planted in the grid frame, we had used some weed blockers. We had lined them out. I think it was a square foot each. We had planted them apart. Those were for so that we can get to transplant over when it was needed. The reason for actually using that particular piece of land as an example to plant the vetiver grass is because the land had sunken quite a lot. The lands surrounding it, I mean, they were much higher up, and due to lots of rainfall and erosion, that part of the land had sunken.
A couple of generations ago, the farmers were the ones that took this grass from Georgetown, where they had it on the edges of the sugarcane fields. And the farmers recognized the ability of the grass to hold up the soil. So they started planting it all over the islands. In the last couple of generations, we lost the understanding of the grass and it's been cut out, right? And we're getting a lot more erosion. Today we want to map out some contours and start to plant all this going down this way, okay? And in order to do that, we've got a special, very simple, what we call an A-frame. A contour is not just a ditch, it's a line of the land. So when the water comes now, the grass is in the right position to hold up anything that washes down.
We had some heavy rainfall recently, about a week ago, and due to it, the soil is washing away. So we're gonna plant in some more grass right in this area around here to fill in back the space. The grass grows in a very, what I would say, peculiar way. The roots go straight down. They grow to, say, 10 feet sometimes. They spread off when they start to grow, and that basically helps to keep the topsoil intact. The ones that we had planted in contour lines, the roots would actually meet together and they would create a form of like a retaining wall, you know, a wall of root that just goes across in your land, and it just helps to strengthen the land. You know, so even though heavy rains do fall and the soil washes down, then it doesn't go anywhere because the vetiver grass is there to help to hold it up. You have to maintain the grass. After you've planted it, then you have to make sure that the surrounding is kept clean in order for it to grow.
We're going to cut them to that length, and then it's
this process now, it's only for a certain amount of time until the grass actually it's matured, and then it takes care of itself. The plant reaches maturity when it gets to about 10 months. But this vetiver grass that we had planted in Penistone, it matured in about 6 to 7 months. Due to the fact that the land wasn't planted, anything wasn't planted for a while, the soil was rich. So the vetiver grass actually took to the soil, and it started off, it shooted up very quickly. Right now, there's quite a lot of toxins that farmers use on their land. They use pesticides and insecticides on their soil, and over time these things would stay in your land and all like that. And when you grow food, sometimes they even show up in your food. You grow some eddos or some tanias, and when you peel them, there's little black spots and all like that in it. And what the vetiver grass does, the root, it helps to pull out any toxins that are in the soil. So it comes like it purifies the soil for you. It's been about 3 months now since I've been on the outside. It feels longer. It feels like if I haven't even been anywhere. When I came out, I came to this land that belongs to my grandfather, and I started planting food. I noticed that because it's sloping, when the heavy rains fall, certain parts of the land just washes away. So as I had told Vonnie before I came out, I had told her that I would apply the use of the knowledge that I got from the vetiver program, and I would use the grass on this piece of land to help to maintain it.
Right, here are some shoots fresh from the nursery at Penistone.
Miss Roudette is like a second mother to me. I went to prison, and I met her in the grass project, and I'd say that she helped me to get my life on track. She's done it for me, and I know she's done it for other young men like myself and all like that. without the trees and the land to plant the trees on for us to get food, then we wouldn't survive. I mean,
that I make.
You make that?
I make.
we can't survive on the food that they make and put in tins and put on the shelf for us to eat. That kills you faster. I would say that I am a nature person. I love to be in the bush. It makes me feel at one, at peace.
So I hope you enjoyed that short film. It's called The GrassMen II. It actually features one of our panelists, Vonnie Roudette. So let's get the panel started. Tonight's panel is on social responsibility for impact. I'm being joined by three amazing people. The first person I want to introduce to you is Vonnie Roudette. She's a visual artist and environmental entrepreneur. She is of Dominican, UK, and Grenadine descent, but she's lived in Saint Vincent since 1992. She has over 25 years experience as a creative educator and is a certified farmer in Saint Vincent and the Grenadines and a forest livelihoods consultant. Vonnie has a wide range of experience in earth building and natural farming and has designed and facilitated educational courses for youth in sustainable agriculture for over 10 years. We just saw a little bit of that in the GrassMen II. We're also being joined by Omar Mohammed. Omar is the CEO of the Cropper Foundation, which is a not-for-profit organization working in the Caribbean. He has worked extensively on a range of initiatives related to sustainability, from the designing of global sustainability curricula to coordinating regional scientific assessment networks and to working with communities to become more effective at environmental advocacy. Right. So apart from being at Cropper Foundation, he's worked as a consultant and a member of several other civil society organizations. We're going to talk a little bit about that in tonight's panel. And last but not least, we're being joined by Kiran Mathur Mohammed. He's the co-founder of Medl. He's a social entrepreneur and co-founder of a healthcare tech company, Medl, which is the winner of the IDB Lab for Latin America COVID-19 Challenge and the first Caribbean company to be selected for Microsoft for startups. Kiran is also a columnist at the Trinidad Newsday, Apparently, it's Trinidad's largest circulation newspaper, a World Economic Forum global shaper, and he holds a directorship at Imaging Security, a security company with over 500 plus employees. Kiran is also a development economist and former banker at Citigroup, and he's worked in finance and not-for-profit spheres in private and public sectors. So I'm really, really thrilled to have all these amazing people here joining us for today's discussion. I wanted to start, of course, with Vonnie, because we just saw some of the stuff that you're doing in the GrassMen II. And I wanted to ask you, how does social responsibility guide your work with the Vetiver project?
Well, I think social responsibility is something that guides us in all aspects of our life, really. So it's not just relegated to particular work. It's a sense of course, the word responsibility is the ability to respond appropriately. And in terms of social responsibility, of course, there's so many different aspects of society that engender challenges that we may be responding to create some sustainable solutions. But in my case, I think it's a long journey of a sense of service in a way, because it's very different from, and part of my early career as an artist and a designer was sort of more individualistic in terms of you do your work and you're responsible for your own development in that area. But I was always very much drawn to research and how the arts and creativity can be applied to our social and environmental problems to improve lives for the whole, the greater whole. And I've always been very community conscious. So I think that it's a constant thread throughout one's work and life, really,
So I want to bring Kiran into the conversation. Kiran, you are the co-founder of Medl. What is Medl, and how does that function as a socially responsible healthcare project or system? I know it's medical technology. Talk to us about how social responsibility guides your process there at Medl.
Thank you, Soyini. I think from the very beginning, when my co-founder, Edward Inglefield, who I have to give a plug here, he actually won an award for his film at the Green Screen Film Festival a couple of years ago. When my co-founder and I really started talking about Medl, what really drove us was first of all, our personal lived experiences. My grandmother is in her late 80s, Edward's grandfather is in his 90s, and we witnessed how difficult it was, our family struggling to manage my grandparents' care and manage their medication. And ultimately, healthcare at its very core is about service. It's about social impact. So at the very beginning, when we designed Medl, and that was very much to solve that problem, because it turned out that it wasn't just a problem that we were personally experiencing. It was the problem was that 50% of all prescriptions globally were never taken, and therefore millions of people, 50%, Soyini, therefore millions of people are dying too soon of heart disease, diabetes. These are conditions which we've known how to treat for decades, but because of structural inequalities within the system, people have just not had the physical access, the time, or the money to be able to manage their health. And that's how we started Medl, right? So what we built was software that enabled doctors to electronically prescribe medication and patients to then receive their prescriptions, order their medication. We, through our own in-house pharmacy, we were able to drive down overhead costs. So as now we can actually deliver medication to patients using technology to bridge the gap at a lower cost than currently, and really impact vulnerable populations, especially women who, by the way, bear the disproportionate burden of care. About 85% of carers are women. And women tend to be in the sandwich generation where they tend to be caring for older relatives as well as children. And so why I mention all of this really, Soyini, and to connect it to a bit of Vonnie's work and Omar's and others. I know this is a Green Screen Film Festival, which was that I think we set out, just like Vonnie, just like Omar, just like yourself, we set out to really solve a problem in society. Now, in our case, we are operating in the private sector, which is important for sustainability. But ultimately being a social impact enterprise. And I'd like to talk about this a little bit later on. The old concept of either you have social impact or you're an evil capitalist, that is a very old concept, right? We really are moving beyond that to models which are sustainable and fully integrated within society. Because the concept is that if companies and society is really operating in a healthy way, then we actually wouldn't need a lot of philanthropy, because then the structures of society would provide for that. And that's in the environment, and that's for healthcare. But
Kiran, that's a very interesting point that you're starting to, a possibly controversial point that you're trying to bring there in terms of the social responsibility of capitalism. Because in thinking about this panel, I was wondering, social responsibility seems altruistic, but it might ultimately be actually a very selfish endeavor. And I think that's something that we're kind of working towards. I'm definitely going to bring Omar into the conversation. But first, Kiran, I do have another question to ask you. We are in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. Does Medl have some conversations or opinions on the way vaccine distribution COVID-19 vaccine distribution has been happening? Because I feel as though Medl was created to address problems that we see manifesting in the unequal distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. So what are some of your thoughts about the conversation that Medl would love to have with maybe some of those first world countries that have been hoarding vaccines?
Well, so how I would actually like to frame it, I'm sure what we've all heard, and we experience this in the environmental realm as well, is there's something called the poverty premium, right? That means that if you're poor, ironically enough, things are going to be, and dangerously, things are going to be much more expensive for you. For example, for some, to take time off of work to drive out of their way to a few pharmacies to try to find their medication might be just an inconvenience. But if you're working an hourly paid job, if each transport cost is expensive for you, that actually is a really big deal. So it ends up being relatively more expensive, particularly if you're in a rural area. And you are seeing that same dynamic play out in a macro scale when it comes to vaccine equity. And there's multiple different types of equity, Soyini, and not just in supply chains. Of course, supply chains, which you mentioned, are a big part of it. But there's also equity when it comes, for example, to education. We see vaccine hesitancy being disproportionately prevalent in those with lower levels of educational attainment and lower levels of income. And we really need to question what sort of systemic inequalities do we really need to address in this. And it turns out there are very many similar systemic inequalities as Vonnie has been addressing, right? Not only with marginalized groups like prisoners, but also from an environmental perspective, where we find that those who are most at risk of climate shifts and climate change tend typically to be in lower income groups in developing countries. But I could talk quite a lot about that.
So let me finally bring Omar into the conversation. Omar, you are the CEO of the Cropper Foundation. You all work throughout the Caribbean. Talk to us about some of the projects that you're involved in and how social responsibility guides your work ethos.
Right, well, thanks so much, Soyini, and great to be here. So the Cropper Foundation, for those who may not know, it's effectively a family foundation. We started 21 years ago, and we're mainly known as an environmental organization. We do a lot of work in that sphere, but our unofficial motto has always been life is about more than personal advantage. And that really guides a lot of, well, everything that we do. And in fact, one of the first things that our co-founders did back in 2000 was they brought people together in Georgetown in Guyana and had a conference called Development as if Equity Mattered. Before, anyone was really thinking about, that sort of combination between sustainability and social development and environment and what that meant. So social responsibility is a core part of everything that we do, because we really fundamentally believe that, the whole environmental conversation is worthless to have if you don't talk about social issues that underpin most, if not all, of the issues that we face. As Kiran said, the vaccine equity issue is just a microcosm of climate finance issues. It's development aid, all of those things. So, a lot of what we do has really tried to bring those two conversations together. We work a lot in agriculture, where we try to do some of what Vonnie set out to do in Saint Vincent, which is work with farmers, especially to sort of try much more environmentally sustainable practices, but also within an understanding that many things don't work to support the move towards those practices. So what can we do as an organization to help support that sort of ecosystem of more environmentally sustainable practices? So right now, funded by the IDB Lab, we're just wrapping up a 4-year project where we've literally done everything from build an app for farmers to develop a new form of certification called participatory guaranteed systems to take the place of expensive testing. So we really try to take a very holistic approach to how we design our projects and actually implement our project, because it's, you have all these terms called agile project management and all of these things, but designing it is one thing, but implementing a project in a post-colonial Caribbean region, it's not linear. You work in communities where things are going fine, then you have family issues, you have issues of job loss, violence, and then you just have to stop for months. Or if you're having a workshop, you have to create space for single moms to bring their kids with them when they come to the workshop on a Saturday, because they have no recourse to paid care. So, we've really tried to build that ethos into everything we do, from how we design and see those gaps. But literally in the day-to-day implementation, it's really stepping out of your sort of privileged space and thinking, oh yeah, they can come to a workshop on a Saturday, and really sit back and understand it's not like Kiran said, it's not a reality for most people. And you just have to, in many cases, suck it up and change your project or change how you implement things to meet the people who you're meant to serve.
A lot of adjusting egos. Vonnie, when I was looking at that documentary, I was really taken by the part where you said, long ago, farmers in St. Vincent used to use the vetiver plant to stabilize their land, and yet in a few generations, they seem to have forgotten. How receptive have the prison service? Because, of course, the gentleman who we saw leading the discussion in the documentary was a prisoner when he learned his abilities, learned to use the vetiver plant. And when he got released, he started implementing the things that he learned on his grandfather's farm. How receptive was the St. Vincent Prison Service to the work that you were doing? And how has it benefited the prisoners who were involved in the program?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and very interesting to listen to Omar and Kiran talk about the growth and the development of the sense of calling into developing their projects, and listening to Omar particularly about how the projects grow and unfold from one stage to another. And of course, that's exactly what's happened within the prison service with this project. Which grew as a tiny seed initially in 2015. It grew from a tiny seed just a 4-week workshop really that was sponsored, very small funding from the FAO. But the response of the prisoners to that, it started with women prisoners, and then the men wanted to get involved. They were really interested, and they took on the information and the skills very, very quickly. And then I volunteered my time to keep it going for a year because I could see the response. And I think this is key in project development and sustainability, is that the response that you receive from the participants or the beneficiaries is what creates the next stage. It creates the text, if you like, that creates the content of the next phase of the project. And so we've just built on that really from one stage to another. And the prison service have been, you know, in as far as they can with the present restrictions, have been really supportive. And of course, rehabilitation is a key area of incarceration. It's a key mandate of a prison institution, because you want the prisoners to come out with skills, with a different sense of what's the possibility in their own life. And of course, many, you know, the funding for rehabilitation is not as it should be. So we have to raise funds independently to get some of these programs off the ground and to continue them. But I think the success of them really lies in the rate of recidivism, or the reduction of the rate of reoffending. And we have seen over almost 200 guys going through this program in the last 6 years, and we have just a 2% rate of reoffending compared to, over a national scale, or the general prison population is more like 67 to 70%. So that in itself shows that the programs are serving a need. And I'd like to stress again, you know, to anyone who embarks on implementing projects, that the need must be there, and that what you're structuring and designing must be appropriate. And so I think there has to be a lot of research and listening and questioning done in order to create projects that really work and that grow from within. Because that original craft program now became the content of the environmental project that you saw in the GrassMen II. And now we're on another phase where we have expanded the nursery that you saw in the film into a demonstration site farm. So we now have a farm area that's integrated with vetiver systems. And we have a workshop running as well in the craft area for ex-prisoners. So we have now a sort of integrated project for ex-prisoners to come and fit in, or just feel a sense of belonging, or, you know, help them with their social re-socialization. So we know the need is there, and we know that not just in terms of the rehabilitation aspect, but the communities, the environment. And you asked a question about the heritage of vetiver. Is a very interesting one in Saint Vincent. I'm about to embark on another project of restoring some of the old vetiver plantings that were done in the 60s. We have a heritage of using this plant. It's not something new. It came in the 1930s to all of our islands, actually. So there is knowledge about it in all the islands. It's performing a very important function then. And so it's a matter of regenerating this knowledge, because we need it even more urgently than before, you know, in terms of the environmental challenges that we're facing with land erosion, with so we need, you know, with the impoverishment of the soil, droughts and floods and landslides. Vetiver can be applied a successful intervention in all of these areas. So
yeah, so it's exciting work, and it's still growing, it's still going, it's still growing. And I've been working in Dominica as well, in 3 different communities with vetiver. So it's something that gradually we hope. And if you notice, the film was structured, we wanted Rod to tell the story. So it's very relatable for young, not just young people, but for people who live in rural communities. And so it's very important that the information came from him. And the idea of the film is that, in a way, you get enough information to go and plant some vetiver, to go out and want to plant vetiver. So it's very important to have that impact, that accessibility, and the to really spread the practice, because it is, as I said, a matter of urgency. I think that we use these important interventions.
I'm fascinated by the heritage techniques that you were talking about, because obviously we saw some of the things that you were doing, and the spacing and using the tarpaulin, I'm assuming it's tarpaulin, to separate the plants. But I'm guessing the research that you're doing is showing that we had other techniques from before that you want to bring back.
Well, actually, the techniques that we used before were contouring, and but mainly it was land stabilization, roadside stabilization. What we're doing is bringing more technique, and they did some basic craft work, but what we're doing now is bringing in some additional applications of vetiver as they relate to food security. And this hasn't been done before. So we're bringing in some new but very timely and needed applications of vetiver to integrate into farm systems, because vetiver can help with it fortifies the microbiome in the soils. There's a lot of sort of technical and scientific aspects to this, but just to put it simply, it can, as Rod mentioned in the film, it has an ability, it's called phytoremediation, where it can absorb heavy metals and toxins from the soil through its roots. It can retain groundwater below the soil. So in the dry season, you've got sort of natural irrigation. It can be used as mulch to generate organic fertilizer and suppress weeds and protect the soil. So it's a key low-cost intervention for soil regeneration. So soil that's been farmed intensively with chemicals over the years can be rejuvenated and regenerated in a very short space of time with a strategic planting of vetiver. So this is a new application that we really want to bring in and want to integrate with land conservation. So I do a lot of work going to work with individual farmers in their small holdings, looking at the land, looking at the needs of that particular land, and just as every farm is different, every farmer is different.
Yeah,
you have to listen and be receptive to the knowledge and the skills and the sort. In creative education, we call it a hidden curriculum. The hidden curriculum is key to a successful delivery of an educational program, and the hidden curriculum is really what the student or the person brings into the picture, and that is really what I work with in my projects is the human resources, what's in the hearts and the minds and the hands, the skills, and you build on that in such a way that when you step away from the project, the community or the team that you've left there have embraced this practice, and it's so much part of their life that it will continue. So I call it sort of endogenous, sort of a growth from within. You start with the hearts and minds and hands, and of course nature is the main ingredient in us
I feel
all.
as though everything that you're saying, Kiran and Omar, are just nodding. I'm like watching them bobbing every time you talk about when you make some of your points. I'm just wondering if I'm putting it too simply, but is social responsibility basically just about considering other people, and how important is that for the sustainability of projects, or as Kiran was talking about, makes just better business sense? Omar, Kiran?
Sure. Well, Soyini, I think, by the way, one of the reasons I was nodding so much is that, you know, it's easy to be really impressed at someone like Vonnie, because it's very rare that you see a project like this where that is really generating so many different outcomes in so many different things. You've got recidivism, you know, you're reducing reoffending rates amongst these groups, which helps the broader community. It actually helps to reduce crime. As well as improve those prisoners' lives. You've got the environmental factor there with the vetiver and the soil erosion happening. And it's like, I love those kind of projects where you have multiple outcomes. I mean, to put it in the terms of an evil investment banker, which I used to be, you know, that is serious return on investment right there. And Soyini, and I think, you know, to directly respond to your question, that is what real social impact looks like, right? That is when you are able to identify that growth from within, actually be like very, very simple. You know, there's a lot of buzzwords in the sustainability field, right? You know, you could rattle them off. But really be able to talk to the people and say, hang on, yeah, we want to be doing wicker baskets, right? And get really down to brass tacks. But Soyini, this also, when you have direct impact, I think I'd like to talk a bit about measurement, because when you can measure it, as Vonnie and other and their team are doing there are a few other fantastic groups. I don't know if you've heard of I Am Movement, our viewers, they do a fantastic job as well. But
right here in Trinidad, right?
In Trinidad, but also I think they've done some work in Dominica, other islands as well. But they've worked with
I think I actually interviewed them on the Morning Brew. I mean, I've interviewed Omar before on the Morning Brew, so yes.
Well, perfect. Well, I think what these kind of programs, I think the next step, how they can scale up, is really now by accessing innovative types of financing, right? So I'm not sure if you've ever heard of a social impact bond, but the world's first social impact bond was launched by Goldman Sachs. And the idea behind this is that this is going to be a financial instrument that does good. So, funny enough, it was actually done in recidivism. So it was done, Goldman Sachs said, we will give you $9.6 million, right? If to Rikers Island prison, if you can prove that that you will bring down reoffending rates among your population by 20%, right? And why? Because there's a direct connection. It's very expensive to house one prisoner. So if they were able to demonstrate that they brought down reoffending rates by 20%, that actually means their costs are going down by 20%, right? So therefore, Goldman Sachs said, actually, I'm going to make money from this, right? Because if the costs are brought down so much and then they're going to pay me a rate of interest, right? This actually could be extremely profitable for them, but also would have a real social impact. So I think that's the next step here, where you have innovative programs like Vonnie's, like Omar's, and really pairing it with new types of innovative finance that actually don't say profit is bad or profit is evil, but say, hang on, all profit does is create incentives which can unlock capital in order to scale the ability to do good and to really impact more people's lives.
Omar, I wanted to bring you back into the conversation, and maybe we might be walking backward a little bit, but if someone was hearing, you had to explain social responsibility to someone, how would you define it, and how would you defend it as a way of designing a project that would actually create massive impact?
Well, okay, I think, I guess we can go through an MBA.
I want you to sell it. That's what if I made the question too complicated, what I mean is just sell social responsibility to people who haven't actually been operating in very socially responsible ways.
Yeah, so I mean, you touched on it a little bit in the first version of the question about looking out for other people. I mean, that's fundamental, but it's really about this idea of value. I mean, Kiran spoke about it earlier, and it's what Vonnie's doing in her projects. It's why do we exist? Why do we exist as organizations? There's this kind of saying that if NGOs really did what we were supposed to do, we will all be out of a job. And we sort of, in many cases, the old traditional model kind of depends on people staying poor and disenfranchised for nonprofits to sometimes exist. But it's really about, what are we creating this value for, and who are we creating it for? And the fact of the matter is that we're creating it for people. And even environmental work, at the end of the day, the earth will be fine. The earth is resilient, it will go on, but we would be dead. We're doing all this work to ensure that we're able to live a safe and secure life. So fundamentally, creating value is about making sure that people have what they need to live a healthy and fulfilling life. So that, if you sort of take that as your sort of go-to compass direction, then everything sort of revolves around it. So, are you designing this with the perspectives of the people the value for whom you're hoping to enrich? And also, understanding that, if you are doing this project for the benefit of people, then not taking them into consideration, one, is a bit perverse in terms of designing, but also it puts you at risk for not being able to fulfill the requirements of your project, either to yourself or to your donors, to your organization, because we all know how complex this type of work is, and especially when it hinges on creating value for people and people are involved. If you don't bring them in terms of design, implementation, then there's stakeholder risk for a reason. One disenfranchised group could mash you up, to put it bluntly. And we can't please everyone, but we can damn well go as far as we can to try and get there. And I think in many cases we relied on being these experts that come into the room and people have to listen to us, and that's more and more not the case. More and more we understand about things like indigenous knowledge, local and traditional knowledge, and what that means for the places in which we work and do these projects. So for me personally, it's coming in not with the ego that, yeah, I went to university, I know a real thing, but going in really with a sense of, this is a partnership. All development work is a partnership. And and just taking that, leave your ego at the door, understand that you're there to create value, and value is for people. So, I think once you go in with that mindset, honestly, like a truthful, honest mindset about that, things tend to fall into place, and you just have to work and put some of the more traditional structures in place, like project management and all those sorts of things. But it's in the service of something which is value creation.
I do want to ask, that sounds like, I feel like I do see we get a lot of amazing projects in the Caribbean, but unfortunately, I find they tend to be very standalone, and you don't see them either continuing or repeating. And they do seem to, especially now, they are people first. So what is preventing that, and how would a truly socially responsible process help that? Or is it that we have to get some of the bigger decision makers to understand real value in social responsibility? I'm so sorry, we have 2 minutes, so you have to answer really quickly.
So Soyini, on that one I'm pretty passionate about, right? Because I've talked about this a little bit in a few other places. I think it's very clear we need to set out and say we are not going to replicate this program for Trinidad or for Dominica. We need to do things like what Vonnie is doing and what Omar are doing and say, hey, we are actually using indigenous knowledge to craft programs and say, guess what, guys? We've piloted it in this small country of a couple 100,000 people or 1 million people. Now let's go and take it to Mexico. Let's go and take it to Brazil. That's what, I mean, even when we were talking to the IDB or Microsoft who have backed us, that's the first thing we said. We said that we are, yes, sure, we are launching and piloting and using indigenous knowledge of this developing country that we're from, of this small island, but we are taking it to impact millions of people from the get-go. And so that's the first thing. And the second thing is, as you do that, align all the incentives. Once you align the incentives and actually track your real outcomes, you may actually discover that what you're doing is not just saving people's lives, but and you're not just doing good, but you can also do really well as well. This concept of actually, guess what? It's more profitable to do good than not, right? Especially when you look at millennials and Gen Z's consumer habits, people are much more aware. And that, I'm taking too much time, but I do want to say the last thing is that's why the most important people here are actually people like yourself, Soyini, and the brilliant film directors, people like Carver, the people who actually craft the compelling narratives and change the attitude. So we need to go out and see more fantastic cinema like this that can really drive change.
Yeah, one of the things I really liked about Vonnie's film is that you see, you know, it's featuring or it's centering this person who's a product of the program, and he's basically doing all the work, and it's a genuine endorsement. So what I wanted to ask Vonnie, or any one of you can also chime in after Vonnie has answered, is have you seen a more positive response to social impact projects during the pandemic?
Well, we've had a lot of challenges during the pandemic, so the impacts have been sort of slower in developing.
So is it better to ask you, are you seeing now that we're kind of coming out and we're seeing a light at the end of the COVID-19 tunnel? Do you think that people are more responsive to social impact projects?
Definitely, I do. I do, because I think that everybody's facing different challenges in many ways. We've had many people have had their income impacted, especially in the islands, which are, you know, heavily tourism dependent, and so people are seeing the need for, you know, resourcefulness. Remember, we also have within our experience sort of natural disasters that we've been dealing with, Hurricane Maria, more recently the volcano in Saint Vincent. So we kind of are launched into sort of very challenging situations that we have to be very resilient in. So resilience isn't something that's really in short supply in our islands. It's just to create out of our challenges something that again responds to a need. You know, the needs may have increased, the needs may be more urgent now, but how is our response going to be appropriate for moving forward? But the question you asked, Soyini, about how to sell social responsibility, I thought was a very interesting one and a very pertinent one, and key really to the sustainability of these projects is, in my experience, it is trying to create an experience for someone, because this is very pertinent to prison rehabilitation. You may get some prisoners who have never really worked in a positive team, productive team before. So they've always been working very independently or in a sort of gang situation. How do you get that person to realize that actually social responsibility is important. It is important. It's key to them not reoffending, actually. And it's in a way, you have to create these experiences that are tangible, that impact a shift in their understanding of possibility, in their understanding of themselves, in their own self-esteem, and the image that they have of themselves that has been projected onto them and that they've acted out prior to that incarceration period. And the aim of the rehabilitation, not just with prisoners, but also with creative education, is to create an experience, to create an environment in which that person can have an experience that gives way to the will to want to be more responsible and by extension socially responsible. So the experiences we create, for instance, working in a team on a big mat, you couldn't do that by yourself. It might take a year, but they are with your team and everybody's working together. This is it looks very simple, but it's actually a very profound and
it would be a bit of a challenge
experience. And
Vonnie, I hate to cut you, but I think we've run out of time. Now, we do have a breakout room for, I think, some of our questions that we would have gotten from social media. So let me end this portion of the discussion here. I want to thank Vonnie Roudette, who is an environmental entrepreneur and artist who is featured in the movie that we started with, the GrassMen II, for participating in this evening's panel. Kiran, Mathur, Mohammed of Medl, and Omar, Mohammed, the CEO of the Cropper Foundation. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation on the social responsibility of impact. I'm excited about Vetiver. I'm excited about all the projects that you're doing. And I'm really, really excited about taking a social responsible approach to a lot of stuff that I'm doing, even as a journalist. We are heading over to that breakout room, so I want you to join us. Thank you so much for taking part in this panel, and have a very safe and good evening. All right, good night.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
It comes naturally to us. Unstoppable energy. We use it to manifest a future. A future where energy takes new forms and is used in new ways for all of us. The new age of energy is here.